Move on. So number 8, on Alex. When I was grading this, several of you were confused because on Alex, they're wanting all this stuff down here. They're just saying, just tell me between A and B, what's it doing here and here and here. And that's what it's going to do on your review, but it's not what it's going to look like on your test, which explains why on the review that I handed you at the beginning of last Friday, that is, so I didn't hand it out, apparently Heather did, that review had all these questions on the side. Must mean something. So make sure you know how to answer, how to take a graph like this and answer it when it's got these questions on the side. What I did decide to do, since the letters were confusing some of you, was I just whited them out. Did that on the test too, so that they won't confuse you, okay? So we're not talking about letters when we are asking, well, first let's get past this. So you can start let me say this before you start the video. When we are asking for the domain, the range, and intervals where it's either increasing, decreasing, or constant, think about X, these numbers on this number line, okay? Don't think about points, think about X values, okay? So number 1, now you can start it. Determine whether the graph is a function. We're going to use the vertical line test. If you feel like it's so dark I'm not going to see your line, put it in between lines. There we go. Now I can see that. Okay. Draw a single line. Use your vertical line test. That's your work. Vertical line test. As long as there is nowhere on this graph where I can draw a vertical line and touch it twice, then the answer is yes. So this was my work with a circle where it crossed and me saying yes. Had it crossed twice, I would make sure I drew the line where it would cross twice, and I would say no. The domain is asking what are we allowed to use for X and expect to find a point on the graph. As long as so my farthest point to the left, this doesn't have an arrow. If it had an arrow, I'd use negative infinity for my smallest value. But since it has a dot, a solid circle, at -6, -6 is the smallest X value that I can use. We always put the smallest value first. The solid circle makes me use a bracket instead of parentheses. That tells people that it includes -6. If I use a parentheses, it means I don't include -6. And then I can use any X value from here to 4, and I can use 4, so I'm going to put a bracket at 4 instead of a parentheses. This is called interval notation, as discussed in class, and it means I can use everything between -6 and 4, and I include both values. Stating the range. The range is talking about what Y values I would expect to be at and see part of my graph. Again, smallest value goes first. Smallest number listed first. Okay, so the smallest number I would use on the y-axis and expect to have a point across from it on either side is -2. Going up the y-axis at 7, I no longer have a point. I saw Sean at the camera. Was it just timing out? I wasn't looking until he got up there. Was he just saving it from timing out?
She's up there.
Yes, okay, I'm going to keep going. Now we want to find g of -2. So we are wondering what we get when we use -2 inside of our function g up here. So I'm going to look so we're calling this our g function. Doesn't say that anywhere, but we'll call this g of x. So when I go to -2 on the x-axis, if I follow that up and try to figure out where I am on the y-axis, I am at 4. Basically, what I'm saying is the point, -2, 4, is the point on the graph that I would get. So when I put -2 in, the point on the graph I would go to is 4. You don't have to label this, but I just want you to understand. G of -2 equals 4 because when I use -2, I get 4 for my answer. Okay, so G of -2 is a 4. Now it wants us to state the intervals where the graph is increasing, decreasing, constant. I am going to make a note here. Always, I'm going to scream it at you just like I did in class. Remember, always use parentheses for these down here. I don't have to, I use whatever I need up here, parentheses or bracket for domain and range. But down here, so below this, anything that's a stately interval, I'm going to always use parentheses because it's meant to be open intervals. So where is my graph increasing? We're going to look at where it is going uphill. So this graph is going uphill when we look from left to right, just like we read from left to right. It's going uphill when I start at 1 and when I go to 4. So I am not thinking about my y values again, only x, okay? Only x values go in here. I wrote that on some of your reviews that I believe she gave back to you. If not, Heather, I did leave those on your desk, but you probably saw that. So this one is increasing from 1 to 4. I am using parentheses because I always use parentheses when describing intervals of increasing and decreasing. I'm only thinking of the x numbers that make that happen. Only x numbers, okay? Only x values, and always parentheses. So I may as well, you know what, while we're at it, let's just put some parentheses here so we won't accidentally put anything besides parentheses, right? So now we want to know decreasing. Where is it going downhill? Well, it's going downhill in a couple of different places. It's going downhill over here when my x is from -6 to -5. So when I'm over here on my graph between -6 and -5, any value over here, I'm going downhill. So from -6 to -5, this is going down. But that's not the only place. It is also going downhill starting at 3 and until I get back over here at 1. So in here, from, pardon me, I said 3, but it's really a -3. From -3 all the way until I get to 1, it is again going downhill from -3 to 1. When we have more than one interval, we use a U to say either one of these works. So that U says this one or that one. Technically it stands for union, but it means or. Now where is this constant? Well, it's only constant just in one place, and that's when I'm in between -5 and 3 is the time when it's just in one interval, I should say. Only between -5 and -3. That is the only place, the only interval where it is constant. You can stop the video. Any questions?